But here now to talk, we have CNBC contributor Robert Reich, former Labor Secretary, author of Aftershock, and Wisconsin Senator, Republican Senator Ron Johnson. He's also a major backer of the Tea Party. Welcome to the show. Senator Johnson, let me just go to you. You know, the surcharge of 5.6% for millionaires is just the beginning, because the Bush tax rates are going to go up under the Obama plan. Also, you're looking at 10, maybe 15% higher tax rates. What does this do to incentives and growth?
It kills incentives, Larry, and obviously it doesn't work. And when you layer on top of that state and local taxes, we're starting to push the marginal tax rate well above 50%, almost to 60%. I mean, think of that. If you're a small business person and you're struggling not only in terms of, under the burden of the tax regimen, but talk about the regulatory burden as well. We are just killing the incentive for small businesses to try and expand their businesses and create jobs.
By the way,
it simply won't work.
The president mocked the Republican efforts to roll back regulations. He was very specific in his mocking of that, which I found very uncomfortable. But Bob Reich, I'll give you a whack at the ball. Why will the economy grow faster? Why will we create more jobs if we're raising tax rates several times? Not just millionaires, 200, 250, right on up to millionaires.
Larry, this is an example of your usual rhetorical question. Let me ask you a question.
I mean,
look at why should we expect that the economy is going to grow if there is not a tax cut for average working people, a tax cut for businesses that create new jobs, an extension of unemployment benefits, and a tax cut with regard to an extension of the payroll tax? I mean, these are all things Republicans have agreed to before. Now, wait a minute. You asked me a question. I just want to finish my question. Why shouldn't we expect the economy to expand with all of these tax cuts and some infrastructure spending that is going to be paid for later on by asking the richest members of America, people over $1 million a year, to pay a little bit more? Why isn't that a good plan? It seems to me a very sensible plan.
I will toss it back to Senator Johnson, because Senator Johnson, what seems to me going on here is temporary one-year tax cuts to be financed by permanently higher tax rates in the future cannot possibly stimulate anything, because people see right through it. Temporary tax cut for a year, permanent increase in tax rates, Senator Johnson. Aren't people smarter than Robert Reich thinks they are?
I believe so. Let's face it. We already tried the payroll tax reduction to the tune of $120 billion in additional deficit spending. It didn't work. Take a look at growth rates. And we've also tried $4 trillion of Keynesian economic stimulus. It also didn't work. We're down 2 million jobs, even though they were telling us it would create 3 to 9 million jobs. So the bottom line is this Keynesian economic plan hasn't worked. It is scaring people. It is scaring people that actually create jobs, because they realize when the government borrows $4 trillion and is on the path to borrow another $8 to $10 trillion over the next 10 years, and even that's understated, it scares people. And then you layer on top of that the $1.75 trillion worth of regulatory costs. Larry, that is a larger number than all but 8 economies in the world. It's 12% of our GDP. That's what we burden our employers, our job creators with on an annual basis. There's no doubt about why we have such a high level of uncertainty and a lack of confidence and anemic job growth.
What's your reaction to that, Bob Reich?
Well, with due respect, let me disagree with the senator on several points. Number one, health, safety, environmental, and small investor protections have been shown to be even more necessary than ever if you see what has happened over the last several years. Number two, it is extremely important to recognize that almost all economic studies have shown that the stimulus did, in fact, create or save 3 million jobs, not as many as we had hoped for, but that doesn't mean you stop. It doesn't mean that the stimulus had no effect at all. In fact, it had a huge effect. When consumers and businesses are holding back, when they are not going to create jobs, you've got to rely on the spender of last resort, at least in the short term, and that means government. And then you have a plan for deficit reduction in the out years. And this is, by the way, this is not, I'm not talking about a left-wing economic view. This is mainstream economics.
This is discredited.
Mainstream economics. It's mainstream, Larry.
This is discredited Keynesian economics. Temporary spending doesn't work. Rebates don't work. Well, those guys are wrong. Senator Johnson, I don't want Robert Reich to be able to filibuster. I want to ask you on this regulatory piece, which President Obama mocked today. You may have seen it. What would your reaction be? I mean, he just dissed the whole idea that regulations can stop the economy and jobs.
Well, Larry, I was a manufacturer manufacturer for 31 years, and so I lived under the rules and regulations. And now that I'm here in Congress, every day, business after business comes in and says, the government's killing us with this regulation or that regulation. And again, people have to think about that $1.75 trillion annual cost to comply with all these regulations. That is an astounding number. And it's just, it is, I mean, that's the best piece of evidence that we simply can't burden our job creators with that level of compliance costs.
What about the president's blasting the banks? What does that do? He's blasting banks, he's blasting millionaires, he's blasting oil and gas companies. What does that do to the economy, Senator Johnson? And I'll let Bob Rice have the last word, but first you, please.
Well, first of all, he's all upset at the banks because they're not donating the kind of money they did in his last election. But it doesn't. We obviously need a functioning financial system, and we need to get that money, that transmission system of borrowing, down to the smaller to medium-sized businesses, and that's what Dodd-Frank, quite honestly, has prevented from happening. So, I mean, let's face it, this president's agenda has taken us 180 degrees in the wrong direction.
Bob Rice,
we need to repeal it.
I'll give you the last word.
I understand why a Republican senator would say all of the things that that the senator is saying. But the fact of the matter is, Wall Street and Wall Street's excesses did create this extraordinary problem we are continuing to live with. We need regulation of Wall Street.
Not
we take away the regulations, we're going to be in worse shape. And on top of that, we need to stimulate the economy, boost the economy. If we don't, nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to change.
I want to boost the economy, but not by raising taxes. I have to leave it there,
Cutting taxes, Larry. Cutting taxes on the middle class and the poor.
Cutting taxes for 10 minutes and then raising them for the next 10 years is no way to stimulate
millionaires.
anything.
On millionaires.
Robert Reich and Senator Ron Johnson, we appreciate it very much. You're also terrific stuff.